So in this chapter we are going to discuss about the immunity. So first of all we have to know about what is immunity. Immunity is nothing but the resistance which is given by our body to the invading pathogen or against any injury which is caused due to any pathogen, or the response which is given by our body against that particular pathogen. So pathogen, any bacteria, any virus which enter in our body, which is responsible to trigger the immunity, and immunity is generated. The immune cells which are present in our body, they are actually responsible for killing those pathogenic organisms. So in immunity there are two different types. One is the innate immunity and second one is the acquired immunity. So what is innate immunity? Innate immunity is the resistance to infections which is that is an individual possessed by virtue by his or her genetic makeup. So it is actually, we call it as an inborn immunity, and this immunity is natural immunity and it is non-specific. That means if any kind of pathogen which enters in our body, it gives the general response. So there are different barriers which are actually responsible for giving the immunity. Actually these barriers protect our body by resisting the entry of any foreign particle in our cells, in our body cells. So what are those different barriers? So those barriers we are going to discuss in today's lecture. So one type of barrier is epithelial cells or epithelial surface. So skin and mucus, these are the two components that we are going to see here. The skin which is present all over our body, it shows the presence of two different kinds of glands. One is the sweat gland and second one is the sebaceous gland. So when you see the sweat gland, it releases the sweat, and that sweat, it contains high concentration of the salt, and which shows the antibacterial activity. Apart from that, the sebaceous gland which secretes the sebum, and also you can see long chain fatty acids which is actually responsible to give the resistance against certain bacteria and fungi. So basically these are antifungal and antibacterial inactivity. Antifungal and antibacterial inactivity. Apart from that, the mucus which is present in the respiratory tract or genital tract or urinogenital tract. So the mucus which is secreted by the goblet cells which is present in respiratory tract, so that secretes the mucus, and that mucus traps the invading pathogen. So when we breathe in the air, so any particles came from the breath, so that is trapped because of the presence of hairs at the nasal chamber, and if any particle left and if it enter inside, so besides that or beyond that, that particular particle or any other microorganism, they get trapped in the mucus, and that is coughed out. So by coughing action, coughing reflex is very important here. Because of coughing, the pathogen which is trapped in the mucus, that get swept to the pharynx where it is swallowed or it can be coughed out. Apart from that, when any pathogen enter in our body from our food, so at that time the saliva which is continuously bath our mouth, so at that time the saliva is also showing certain antibacterial activity. Apart from that, if any food enter in our stomach, so the gastric secretion which are responsible to kill that particular pathogenic organism. Because of gastric secretion shows the presence of HCl, so that acidic condition actually eradicate that particular bacteria which has entered through our food. Apart from that, the lacrimal secretion which is also important. There is a presence of conjunctiva here, and that conjunctiva is always free from the particles because there is a continuous secretion of lacrimal gland, and that lacrimal gland actually secrete the tear, and that tear actually contains the lysozyme, which is a low molecular weight protein molecule which is thermolabile and which is having the bactericidal activity against certain pathogenic gram-positive bacteria. Not all bacteria, but certain pathogenic gram-positive bacteria. And A. Fleming is the scientist who have discovered that presence of lysozyme in tear or in lacrimal secretion. Next point we are going to see here, that is about the antibacterial substance which is present in blood and tissue. So there are number of proteins which are present in our blood which is in inactive form. When any pathogen enters, at that time it gets activated, and one of the important protein, that is interferon, which is secreted by either white blood cells or certain cells which are infected by viruses. And actually that interferon, it sends the signal to other cells to protect themselves from the viral infection. So this interferon plays an important role in immunity. The next one we can see here, that is the phagocytic cells. Actually phagocytic cells, it includes the macrophages, microphages, and certain natural killer cells. Neutrophils are also there. Basically when any pathogen enters in our body, at that time the macrophage cells or natural killer cells or neutrophils, they can engulf the pathogen, and then after engulfing that particular pathogen, it get destroyed over there. And basically these cells show the phagocytic action, so this is also the part of innate immunity. Apart from that, there is one another condition which we call it as a fever. That is also one type of barrier, because any pathogen, any bacteria, any virus, if it enter in our body, at that time our body temperature get raises, and it raises, actually the increased temperature of body, it accelerates the physiological process which will help to kill that any pathogenic organism which has entered in our body. In our body, if any microorganism, if any bacteria, if any virus, if it has been entered, so at that time the increased temperature accelerates the physiological process, and because of that those get killed. And this increased temperature is also responsible for, there is one important function here, that increased temperature also stimulates the cells to release the interferon, which are virus infected, to kill the virus. So these are the functions of fever. Apart from that, acute phase proteins. So acute phase proteins, there are number of proteins. When any infection leads to, if there is any injury, and if that injury leads to infection, at that time there are number of proteins get accumulated, and these we call it as a acute phase protein. And in that there are number of proteins, for example C-reactive protein is there, then mannose binding protein is there, different proteins, alpha 1 immunoglobulins are there, or we call it as a alpha 1, we call it as a alpha 1 acid glycoprotein, then second one serum amyloid protein. So these are different proteins which we call it as a acute phase proteins. So basically these proteins are actually responsible to enhance the host resistance against that invading pathogen, and also promote the repair of the damage which has been caused. So these proteins are very helpful, and these are actually responsible to give the innate immunity. So this is about the innate immunity, where we have seen the different types of barriers. In that we have seen the epithelial surfaces, there we have seen the skin which shows the presence of sweat, that sweat which is having the high salt concentration, which is actually responsible to kill the bacteria. Then mucus is also there in respiratory tract, in gastrointestinal tract, in urinogenital tract. There is a presence of that particular mucus, The flushing action of urine also responsible to remove all the bacteria which is present in the excretory, that means that urinary tract. And there is one presence of one chemical that we call it as a spermine or zinc, which is present in the semen, that is also showing the antibacterial activity. So HCl, which is present in the stomach, that is also responsible to kill the pathogenic organism. And the lysozyme, which is present in the tear, that is also responsible to kill the certain gram positive pathogenic bacteria. Then interferon we have seen. Apart from that, certain phagocytic cells, macrophages, natural killer T cells, natural killer cells. Apart from that, neutrophils are also there. Certain monocytes are also there. They show the phagocytic action. And fever is also there because of raised temperature is actually responsible to kill the pathogenic organism, as well as it increases the rate of physiological reactions that is actually responsible to kill the pathogenic organism. And that increased temperature also activate the cells to release the that particular interferon, which will act against or it gives a signal to other cells to prevent them from any other viral infection. And acute phase proteins, which are actually which are released when infection is caused due to the injury. At that time, these acute phase proteins, in that we have seen different proteins, that is C-reactive protein is there, then alpha-1 acid glycoprotein is there, then serum amyloid protein is there. So these are the acute phase proteins which are actually come over there in the plasma, and or their concentration increases in the plasma, and actually these are responsible to enhance the host resistance, and it prevent the tissue injury, and this actually help in repairing the tissues from the inflammatory lesions. So these are the different barriers which are present in the immune system, that is innate immunity. Thank you.